speaker is been in the industry for over 35 years. She is a marketing specialist. She is a sales specialist, but more importantly, she works with an amazing brand. So she is a sunscreen specialist. She's going to come in, give you information. Also, they have giveaways. If you haven't gone to their booth, make sure, because they have a special gift for you today. I would like to introduce Kathy Dwyer. Welcome, Kathy. I can't wait to learn everything that you know in the next 30 minutes. There you go, my dear.
Thank you. So Sean is a hard act to follow.
If you need that, or if you prefer just to stand right here.
Okay.
Thank you.
But one of the things that really does help, at least me, feel empowered when I'm worried about something is a little bit of education and knowledge, and as Denise said, having answers. So hopefully we're going to give you some answers today. Let me make sure I know how to do this in the right direction. We're going to talk about sun protection in the rainy day that we're having outside. But one of the things that we're going to talk about is how you need sun protection on every day, whether it's raining or not. Because really it's the first line of defense against photoaging, which you all know, but your clients don't. So hopefully one of the ideas that we're going to talk about is a little bit of science to help people understand the science of photoaging, a little bit of an in-depth look at sunscreens, importantly your client's perspective. What are they looking for? What can you offer them? And then the role of antioxidants. And that helps put together your photoaging defense as you look at sunscreens plus antioxidants. So let's start with the science of sunscreens. And I'm going to peek over here. We all know photo damage is the damage that occurs when UV light hits unprotected skin. It's the direct result of many years of photo damage. And that's one thing that clients don't tend to realize. I think they realize it more now, but it's what I did when I was 14. And I was a pale person and wanted to sit out in the yard and sat out there with no sunscreen on or my SPF 2 Bain de Soleil at the time. And that's what leads to photo damage over time. It occurs in the deepest layers of the skin, so it takes a long time for it to show up. So somebody said, I didn't get burned, or I never burned, and that's it. It's coming up from the surface over the years. It includes lines, wrinkles, spots, rough spots, loss of tone, which as I now am making my way rapidly through my 60s, I've noticed that loss of tone a whole lot more. And again, realized, geez, had I thought about this more when I was 25, I could have done something more to prevent that. So that's one of the things that you can be telling your clients over time that they're doing. And even a tan is a sign of photo damage. And it's estimated that up to 90% of visible skin changes are really due to UV exposure. Hence, sun protection is fundamental. Let's take a step back further. For those of you who are well up to speed on sun protection, forgive me for going back to some basics. But sometimes this is what you need to help with your clients. And we all know UVA rays are the aging rays, UVB rays are the burning rays. But there's more that goes on in between that. There are more differences. UVA, unlike UVB, is strongest at noon. UVB is strongest in the summer. That's what SPF is meant to, it measures, and SPF measures the amount of UVB that's covered. UVA rays are present all the time, all year round, 365 days a year. They're coming through whether it's cloudy, whether it's sunny. They come through glass. So when I think about my favorite office I ever had that had a nice southern exposure and had sun coming into it, that sun was in my face all the time and I wasn't thinking about it. When I drive, and I can see it now on my hands, the sun that comes right through the glass. You have that driver's side sunspots on the hands. That's pure sign of UVA damage. Both UVA and UVB play a role in skin cancer. So again, another reason to be able to do it. It's not just from sunburns that the sun, it's from the UVA rays primarily. Let's look a little bit, I feel like I'm out of order here, at what somebody looks for. I want to talk about sunscreens. I'll just go with where the slides are. And let's look at what's on a sunscreen label. So if I look at the SPF number, that's what people generally see. That the SPF really, again, talks about UVB rays. Down below that, you want somebody to look for broad spectrum, because that's going to tell you that it also covers UVA rays in there. Sometimes you'll see something that says PA plus or PA plus 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 or plus 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 plus. That's a protection factor of UVA which originated in Japan. It's not required in the US, but people will often see it. So it's from 1+ to 4+, and that's published in there, and that's a separate piece of things. In the US, there is no separate test for UVA. It's done on, or there is a separate test, but there's no separate measure that's put on there. And then water resistance is the other thing. In the US, again, there's either you have no water resistance, 40 minutes water resistance, or 80 minutes water resistance. Those are the only 3 things that are allowed on the label. And it's important to help your clients understand sunscreens are regulated as over-the-counter drugs in the United States, so the labeling is all very prescribed. And so that's what the testing does. And what it's doing, it's not saying it's wearing off after 40 minutes, but it means that the SPF has been tested, for example, for 40 minutes water resistance, and it means that it still holds that SPF number after 40 minutes or after 80 minutes. And if somebody says, but it says reapply after 2 hours, it's like, yeah, they don't test for 2 hours for water resistance, and it's not logical, but that's the way it works. On the back is, you'll see the active ingredients at the top. And the main ingredients are listed separately in the top of a drug facts label, again, because these are over-the-counter drugs. And you're looking there for what's in it. So in the case of the one I'm showing, it's titanium dioxide and zinc oxide. If you see a whole list, you see more chemical sunscreens that go in there. Titanium dioxide and zinc oxide are the 2 mineral sunscreens. But that's an easy way to see what's in it, rather than just look at what's on the front of the package. We talked a little bit about this already, SPF efficacy and broad spectrum. You want to look for broad spectrum. Let's talk about SPF a minute and how high is high enough. And also a little bit about UV wavelengths here. So let me go to the UV wavelengths first. This chart shows different ingredients and what they cover in terms of that UVA to UVB spectrum. The darker piece, the darker color of blue, shows what something's covering. So the bottom line there is zinc. And zinc oxide as a physical blocker is blocking the whole spectrum. I'm sorry, the bottom line is sugar. The second line is zinc oxide. The titanium dioxide, also a physical blocker, really is concentrated in the UVB range on the left. And most of the chemical sunscreens cover a small portion somewhere in there. So typically when you look at the back of a chemical sunscreen thing, you'll see 4 or 5 different ingredients listed. That's so that they can cover each portion of that wavelength protection. Now, this is one of my favorite questions of how high is high enough? What's the SPF that somebody should be using? do you think? What do you tell clients?
30.
30, 40 in there?
Yeah.
Yep. But what can you see if you go out into the drugstore shelves? How high do you see out there?
100.
100. So if you want to go back to high school math classes, the SPF is done on a logarithmic scale, which means you get to those high SPF, you get to high coverage pretty quickly. So an SPF of 10, to make it easy, lets through 1 minus 10%. It covers 90% of UVB rays. An SPF of 40 covers 97%. If I did it the other way, if an SPF of 2 would cover 50%, so then 10%. So to get from an SPF 40, which covers 97.5%, to an SPF 50, which blocks 98%, so an extra 0.5%, you have to add a lot more sunscreen ingredients to get there, but you're not really protecting much more on the skin. So imagine that and take it up to an SPF 70 or an SPF 100. It's really not giving that much more of a measure. And in the olden days, when I first started working in this industry, and I really did work on a brand called Bain de Soleil, which had an SPF 4, it was their biggest selling product. In those days, even in Australia, the highest SPF out there was a 15.
Wow.
And where it's adapted now is that people realize, okay, an SPF 15 might actually do a good job if people used it the way they should use it, but people don't reapply. It wears off. People put it on spotty and are very sparing sometimes. So in order to really get that amount of coverage, you may have to go with a higher SPF product. So that's why it's recommended now that it's an SPF 30. And they're trying to get an SPF 30 as the minimum, is what the American Dermatology Association and the FDA both recommend that you use. So we're right in there. Many of the products that I'm personally involved with now are SPFs 40 to 45. But that's because they're, again, have that physical zinc blocking. If you look at mineral versus chemical sunscreens, we talked a little bit about them, and it's a little more complicated than physical sunscreens reflect and mineral sunscreens, or mineral sunscreens reflect and chemical sunscreens absorb, but not a lot. It's the physical sunscreens take in light and reflect it and refract it back out. Chemical sunscreens take in the UV light. There's a chemical reaction that converts that to heat, and it goes off from there. The other big difference is that physical sunscreens will sit on top of the skin. They're meant to act on the top of the skin, whereas chemical sunscreens absorb into the skin. But unfortunately, as they absorb into the skin, they can absorb into the bloodstream as well. And that's where the controversy comes in about chemical sunscreens. Are somebody better off using a chemical sunscreen than no sunscreen? Yes, for sure. If they can find a mineral sunscreen that they like, is that better? Yes, I think so. But it's not a black and white answer. And that's where it comes to the client-centered perspective that I like to use. Because the best sunscreen is the one that your client loves to use. And by the way, as I was talking to somebody else in here, the sunscreen your client loves to use may not be the same sunscreen that you love to use. So it's important to think about it from their perspective. There are people who are looking certainly for an effective SPF, an elegant finish, no white cast, not sticky, not smelly, won't burn the eyes, water resistance in there. And I should add, just to jump back to the mineral versus chemical sunscreens for a second, That's one of the huge differences between them, is that mineral sunscreens tend not to migrate into the eyes and burn the eyes, whereas chemical sunscreens, if you've ever gotten one in your eyes, you know you feel it as they're there. So what's one of the things that you have? You have people with different skin tones, and then your clients may not have the same skin tone as you do. There's two ways to think about it. One is to cover invisibly. So you want to look for something that doesn't show when it's on darker skin, lighter skin, and finding the right thing that's in there. So a good mineral sunscreen, you're looking for something that can just disappear as somebody puts it on, or at least disappear to the extent that they want it to, without leaving a white cast. The other way of coming at it is a matching or enhancing, as I put it, where you're looking for something that matches the skin. So you either want something to disappear, or if it's going to show, to match well. So those are two different ways to go at it, like a BB cream or tinted moisturizers. There's a study, and we'll talk about it a little bit, on universal tint mineral sunscreens. And this was done at the Henry Ford Foundation in Detroit. And they looked at 7 different mineral sunscreens that all advertised or all were labeled for universal tint. And they looked at it on all Fitzpatrick types, so 1 through 6. And what they found, it's hard to see on this slide, but they looked at what the investigators, so what the scientists saw as they observed people's skin, how well it matched. They looked at what the patients or the participants saw, and then they used colorimetry, a machine, to say how much did it change this. And of those 7 products that are in there, this is a published study, the only one that really worked well on all of those measures on skin type, on Fitzpatrick's 3 to 6, was Tizo Ultra Zinc Tinted. So that's something to look at as you're looking at it, and again, but it's something you want your clients to try as they're going. Just a quick note about blue light. So, how many of you have questions from clients about blue light? A few. So blue light was never an issue, because yes, there's blue light, visible light obviously comes from the sun and comes in, but not much actually comes from the sun. Now that we're all sitting in front of screens for hours and hours a day, people are just getting a lot more blue light. So you don't think about, do I need sunscreen to get past my blue light? But as you think about it, the 2 things that work in there to deflect blue light are zinc oxide and iron oxide. There are no regulations right now about blue light testing the same way they are about UVA or UVB. So for a long time, for example, we didn't talk about blue light, and in the end we said, okay, we've got to go get our products tested because we have enough doing it. And what we're finding is that products do, again, mineral sunscreens, zinc oxide, iron oxide, do deflect blue light. Chemical sunscreens do not do anything about blue light. So you want to look for those ingredients as you advise clients who are concerned about what blue light might be doing. It's just one more step on that spectrum, UVB, UVA, and then you get to visible light. So it's still in there. Welcome. So what do you do after you're in the sun?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there any data on the level of protection that, say, zinc oxide gives for blue light, kind of similar to like the SPF blocking UVB? Like, is it?
There's no standard measure yet for it. So testing that we've done, for example, it will do a percentage. It's given us a percentage of blocking. And in our case, everything was between 80 and 100%. But we're not putting, we're putting like protects against blue light on the package, but not those percentage numbers because it's just not standardized enough for me to feel confident that this is the test, this is the labeling claim, and it's there. I feel good that it's tested, but not necessarily that that measure is going to be the measure that sticks forever, or somebody doesn't come up with another test.
And you mentioned iron oxides. Where would you get iron oxides from?
Iron oxides are colorants. So, for example, if you come back with all of our tints are done with iron oxides. And they come in different shades, and it's a mix of yellows, reds, blacks that create the tints that you see. So it's generally, if somebody's looking for a sunscreen for blue light, you're looking for iron oxide and zinc oxide, and so a tinted mineral sunscreen is a great way to get both of those. Generally in a sunscreen, the iron oxide itself is not, there's not enough in there to really do the blue light protection, but it works in conjunction with the zinc oxide. And the zinc, what we found, at least with our formulas, is having the zinc oxide is what really pushed it up first. Let's talk about antioxidants a little bit. So, who here considers themselves a really good sunscreen user? Like, you're faithful at it? Everybody, almost. Do you still need something else? Do you still need antioxidants? Yeah. Yeah, they're really complementary to each other, and I always put antioxidants, if sunscreens are the first line of defense against photo damage, antioxidants are the second line of defense. Because no matter, even the most dedicated person, you skip a little bit, you're out with the dog in the morning, you want your vitamin D walk, you know, you take a little bit of a walk and you get vitamin D, you're still getting that sunlight in there. And so to help counteract the sun damage, you want to look for antioxidants. So whether it's an antioxidant serum or whether it's antioxidants in other products that you're doing things, it's really something that's important to add. I, as many years as I had been in skincare, didn't really understand the concept of oxidative stress. Does everybody understand what that is? So think about it this way. Your body makes antioxidants, you have them naturally in your skin. As you have free radicals coming at your skin, those antioxidants pair with the free radicals to kind of disarm them. But there's a limited supply. So as you keep getting more and more free radicals, which come from UVA rays and pollution in other places, your skin's natural resources kind of get used up as they're going. And so that's why that creates oxidative stress, when they're getting used up faster than or slower than the free radicals are coming in. So that's why you want to sit there and say, okay, use a topical vitamin C serum or something that goes with it, and that helps counteract that. You're just replenishing your skin's own supply of antioxidants. And it was like when I started realizing it's how much is going in versus how much is coming out, and that's oxidative stress, the whole thing made sense to me, at least. So as a non-esthetician and as an amateur, that may be a way to talk about it with your clients. That's an easy thing to do. So I'm not sure what this is in the end. In conclusion, think about mineral sunscreens. Think about what your clients want, what they're using, what they want to do. I talked to a few people earlier, and it's like, some people like a really matte finish. Some people like a dewy finish. Some people like a tinted sunscreen. Some people like a non-tinted sunscreen. Some people like something they can use in place of a makeup. Others are like, no, I'm going to use my regular makeup. I need something that the makeup will go on over very easily. Some people are outdoors all the time and need something to cover larger body parts. Others are covered up and say, I just need something for my face, and I want that to be really beautiful. So it really depends on what your client looks like. There are ways to sample products. Make use of sampling. Get them to try it. Whether you're selling the sunscreen or you're just recommending it to somebody, there's always a way to get them a sample that they can try out and help. And that's the best advice I can do is just get people to try, and all those kind of myths about sunscreens, they'll hear or they won't hear, but they can find one that they like if they look hard enough. I want to, and maybe I shouldn't mention, but want to mention one thing in there. I don't know how many people are familiar with or have heard the FDA or saw headlines about foam sunscreens?
Yeah.
Okay, because Tizo was one of the brands that got a warning letter for it. Just to clear it up, and you'll see we do not have our foam sunscreens back there because they're not currently in good graces with the FDA, although we have responded to the FDA. This came really from, I think, the growth of vacation sunscreen, which has been out with their whipped cream looking container. Supergoop had a large selling foam sunscreen. The FDA in their monograph lists 10 forms that sunscreens can take. So it can be a lotion, it can be a spray, it can be a stick, it can be a gel. Foam is not one of those 10 listed sunscreens or 10 listed forms. So therefore, they said the foam sunscreens that are out there are mislabeled as drugs. Now, we've been selling our foam sunscreen since 2012, and it hasn't been an issue until now, and I think that's because of the vacation growth. So there's nothing harmful. It had still passed the SPF testing. We went back and said, look, this is a lotion that then gets propelled out. That's the only, the form of it is actually a lotion. But it's not, we're not going to get into a fight with FDA about it because we have a lot more important things to do in getting people to use sunscreens. But the headlines you sometimes see are a lot scarier than what you might otherwise see. And that's it. If you have questions, at the back of the room when you have breaks,